yes. Oh, it's your family, and all this sort of stuff. Well, this is what we had, time in and time out. And my mother was absolutely broken-hearted that she could never see her daughter. And when we did, my sister would say the most insulting things about us, because what my brother-in-law was doing, he was making out stuff about us to make it seem that she had terrible parents, terrible family, to separate us. But he still needed us there as a kind of, shall we say, way of demonstrating to my sister through his imagination, oh, we're terrible, we're awful. Now, I'll give you a perfect example. Soon after my sister and brother-in-law were married, they lived up in North Hertfordshire, and I had to go, this was on a Saturday, I had to go to Cambridge for some reason, I can't remember. And driving back, stupidly, I thought, I know, I'm going through the village where my sister and brother-in-law are, I'll go and pay them a visit. That's my family. Oh, you did not do that with them, because it all had to be like a protocol. You know, you had to have a set time and when you go and see them, that type of thing. So anyway, it was a Saturday. I got to their house, and it was a boiling hot July day, scorching hot it was. And when I got out of the car, they weren't in, they'd obviously gone shopping, and the milkman had left 2 pints of milk that was turning to yoghurt in full sunlight on their doorstep. So I thought, oh dear, that'll be off by the time they get home. So I did what most caring people and most family members would do. I thought, oh, I know what I'd do. They had this sort of gate that had was very narrow, so you could slide stuff underneath it. So I slid the milk bottle underneath it, shimmied over the fence, which was quite easy. It was, it was not that high, and then put the 2 milk bottles into a watering can of cold water, and then shimmied back again, and then found an old envelope in my car and a pen and wrote on it what I'd done and shoved it through their letterbox and thought I'd done my good deed for the day and thought no more of it. What transpired from that, I will never forget. Now, my family, honesty was the most sacred of all things. You had to be honest. My father was, some people say, embarrassingly honest. He's a very, very honest man. And my brother-in-law said via my sister, he wouldn't say it to your face, that my father, he had a key to their house in case of an emergency, and he said that my father had taken a copy of the key, given it to me, and I'd actually broken in, and he was checking to see if I'd stolen anything. Sorry, it still affects me now. Oh, sorry. And it made me ill. It absolutely made me ill, and I had to take a couple of days off work because I was so ill, being tarnished as a thief. Well, in the end, my father was upset about it because it made it look as if he was dishonest. We went over to see my brother-in-law and sister, and of course we had to make an appointment first and all this, that and the other. And when we got there, my father took my brother-in-law to one side with me and said, excuse me, you are accusing us of being dishonest, and went into the full story. And my brother-in-law looked him straight in the face and said, I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, I just don't know what you're talking about. Meanwhile, my sister is going, shall we say, playing lots of facial signals showing that she's so horrified that we've actually gone against her, and she's told us in full confidence and we shouldn't have blown the gaff. Anyway, my brother-in-law then made us look small by saying, I don't know what you're talking about, because we learnt that he could lie to your face, he could look straight through you like Bill Clinton did, when he didn't sleep with that woman, and show you up. And my dad said, well, hang on a moment. And he explained what happened, and he said, don't know what you're talking about. Be very thankful for the milk being put into the watering can. What are you talking about? And then when we left, we got the feedback from my sister that my brother-in-law said, well, my father should go and see a psychiatrist along with me, because there's something mentally wrong to sort of make these things up. There's something not quite right. And of course he did his precise talk. Everything is precise. Don't know. And then eventually, as time went on, when he said these upsetting things via my sister, he never said it to your face, he would do exactly the same every time. Well, I think there's something strange here. I don't know what's wrong. Well, again, time went on, and eventually my sister got so bad that when my mother was dying in hospital, my sister said, well, look, it's costing me money to get here. And remember, my brother-in-law had a very good job. They had a very good income. They weren't short of money. And my mother said, she said, I won't be able to see you unless you pay me to come here. And I can't remember the exact figure, but I think it was several £100 my mum had to pay out of her old age pension so that my sister would visit her. And all my sister did, I think she washed about 6 items, but the fuss she made! And she insisted that she washed my mother's these items. I washed everything else. And you would have thought that she'd done the laundry for an entire army. Oh, I had to do this, I had to do that. Well, my father was disgusted that, to charge a relative up to visit them in hospital is just unheard of. Well, eventually my mother passed away, and my father had a stroke at that time, and I cared for my father full time. And my sister was driving my father and I so mad by making accusations, then denying them, and more accusations, then denying them, and flicking everything around and twisting things and twisting the stories. And then she tried to embezzle my father. She made out that my father had actually had a loan from my sister when several years ago, a very small amount, and he paid her back with interest. But she made out, and this is when he was very ill, that he'd never paid her back, and he had. And I had the proof that he paid her back. And this made my father more ill. It really upset him. And remember, he was in his late 80s at that time, and he was devastated that a daughter of his would make up such a story. Well, eventually I got to the point, my father had carers coming in because it was too much for me to handle, and he was telling these carers what was going on, and one of the carers said, get away from her, get away from her, she's toxic. She said, she is more trouble, and she'll cause you even more trouble. And my father and I decided, I said to my sister, okay, that's enough, I never want to see you again. We don't want to see you again. And put the phone down. Well, what followed, my sister then tried to smash my business, because I run a business from home, and luckily the internet had just come in then, but it still relied heavily on phone calls. So what she did, she would start at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'd actually put a block on the phone so she couldn't actually get through to me. But what she would do is she would phone the number, and whilst the number is tied up with the message saying, I'm sorry, this number, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was, this number is blocked, you can't get through, she wait till that happens, hang up and carry on. And she did this from 9 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon every day. What she did during the day I don't know, but to sit the phone from 9 o'clock in the morning to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, of course people couldn't get through to me. So I not only had to look after my father, I had to try and run a business with her continuously doing these phone calls. A few times she did get through, and she left the most unbelievable message on my answer phone. She said, I've gone mad, as if there's something peculiar happened with me, and I'm keeping her father from her, and everything's twisted around the opposite way round, and this, that, and I got messages from my brother-in-law saying, we're going to visit him in hospital that's when he went into hospital, when you're not around, and all this sort of. And I realised that psychopaths thrive on stress. They love tension. They absolutely thrive on it. Now anyway, that is a small potted history of what actually happened. And I realised that what we were going through was a microcosm of what globalists are doing to the rest of the population, because psychopaths' minds seem to be, it's almost as if they've been handed a script. They seem to work in the same process all the time. They thrive on creating tension. Their view of reality is different, and they know how to twist and turn. And with my sister, she is totally under his sort of direction now. You know, I mean, if he said jump, she would jump. I'm sure she would. Well, I haven't seen my sister for over 10 years now, but unfortunately I still get the occasional toxic letter, and I won't bore you with reading it, but when you look at it and what she's done, she's actually turned the rest of the family against me. I'm the scapegoat. And what she does, she cut and pastes facts. So she'll twist and turn reality on its head. Because she once said to my mother, what's truth, what's reality, I don't understand, and that sort of thing. Well, that's the story, and this is why I believe that I've got a sort of more of an insight into what globalists are up to, because they seem to love tension. But this is the reason why my sister and her husband want to try and keep in with me, to create the tension all the time, rack it up. Now, I did discover that when I said ta-ta to my sister, I said it politely, I said goodbye, they decided to volunteer in the police force, and they were sitting manning these cameras that catch people speeding. Nice, eh? So I guess they got their sort of, shall we say, sense of tension from that. Nasty people. Anyway, I think I've said enough on that subject, and I'm writing a book about it, and thank you very much for listening, and please remember to subscribe and hit that button, and ring that bell.